Hey there guys, Birdie here, and I am doing the January Joy Box tutorial. So we are creating these puffy fabric hearts on rustic candlesticks. You can get the other one. If you haven't watched the supply video, go check that out. The link is in the description. But let's just get started and dive right in to try and keep this video as short as possible. All right, so I'm going to start by painting all my pieces, and then we will do the part. Whoops. So this inside piece is just going to be a piece that holds our fabric in, so we don't need to paint that. I'm going to put that off to the side, and then also the inside of the smaller heart. So we'll put those to the side, and we'll bring out all these pieces. I have created a stain, a rustic finish using wax, or wax like crayon or an old candle. And so I want the color underneath that's going to peek through to be dark. So I am going to start by using the antique wax. It's the Waverly brand from Walmart. And I'm going to wax or apply this stain to everything. So this product here has like a stain in it, a water-based stain. Oh, I do not need to go way up there. I don't know what I'm doing. We do not need to paint this because it's all going to be covered, and I completely spaced that. Just kind of got going here. But this brand is got a stain in it, and it's a liquid wax and a bunch of other things. It's water-based. So it does have a waxy finish, but we're still going to use some crayon to help us remove the paint and create a chippy paint look. So we'll quickly get everything stained here. I'm not too concerned about having it look super great in terms of it being stained and making sure it all is the same color, the amount that's put on there, because I'm going to paint right over it. So if you wanted to have like a pink or a red or a teal or gray or black kind of peeking through the white, you would put that color on as the base instead of the brown, which would be something kind of fun and different to do as well, is to just start with a color and then put the white on top of it. I should have done that. One more piece here. This one's a little delicate, so just take care. It's a little thinner. There we go. And then I'm going to get my blow dryer out and blow dry these pieces here. All right, so I'm using a crayon for this. If you don't have a crayon, an old candle, white candle, works just as well. So either of these for this chippy paint technique works. I even have a small candle in here. And you can get these from the dollar store, and they come in 2-pack. So super cheap. Then you don't have to buy a whole pack of crayons just for the white crayon. But I had bought a pack of just white crayons. I don't know if you know you could do that. I didn't know you could do that. So I have a lot of white crayons for classes. Again, I'm not sure why I'm doing that because that's going to get covered there. So I am just taking my crayon and coloring in areas, kind of creating messy. I'm not trying to be too methodical about it, being very random, going up and down, right and left, creating little blobs of wax where kind of thinking I want the paint to be removed. Again, not trying to get too methodical with it, just really messily painting wax blobs. And I'm using a fairly heavy pressure because I want that wax to get on my surface. If you use, if you're just like do light, a little bit of wax will get put on, but not enough to allow you to easily scrape it away. So don't be afraid to get a little forceful with applying this wax. And then with this one, I'm not going to apply the wax too. I'm just going to paint over it and then sand the edges just because it's so narrow and delicate that I'm not going to get too crazy with that piece. All right, so let's see if I can show you. You can kind of see the areas that I painted. There's a little bit of a sheen. It's kind of got almost a gray tone to it. If I look at it on the side, I can kind of see it. So if you can't see it after you've put it on, it's not hard enough. You didn't use enough pressure and you want to go over it. So you should be able to pick it up and kind of do this in the light and kind of see the sheen there, and then you'll know you're good to go. All right, so then we're going to do the white paint next. And I had plugged my, hold on one second. I plugged my glue gun in and didn't have it on the pad. I don't know where my pad is. And so it was just kind of heating up in my basket of other stuff. All right, paintbrush. Just gonna use a large flat here. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm gonna use a makeup wedge. Just gonna tap it on. These pieces are small enough that I don't want to use the brush and then just kind of get messy sides. Although this is maybe one of the few projects that I would consider painting the edges to. If you decide to paint the edges, I do recommend taking a baby wipe and just wiping off any excess of the burnt edges that might be on there. Because some of the wood burns a little hotter, and so you'll get a more of a char than other parts of the wood. And if you're going to be painting it white especially, I would recommend that. So all you'll have to do is take a baby wipe and just rub it and see how it just kind of cleans it up a little bit so that the paint will accept that. Or the wood will accept the paint a little easier. So if you're going to paint your edges, do clean up those first. Otherwise, it just turns a little bit yellow, which in this case, because we are going rustic, might be okay too. So I'm not going all the way down the candlestick because remember we do have this piece that's going to sit at the bottom. It gives that candlestick an extra bit of dimension and also stability for the base. Alrighty, let's get our blow dryer out again. We'll put a second coat on these. All right, coat number 2. Now, usually after the second coat, I sand the piece to knock down any fibers that, you know, might have raised up with the wood and it might become rough. But because I'm creating a rustic finish, I am going to be sanding it after the final coat just to rough it up a little bit. Plus, we're going to be scraping it. And so I'm not going to do the sanding quite yet. Oh, I forgot this piece. Alrighty. All right, everything's got a second coat. And we're going to let that dry just naturally while we work on cutting out our hearts. Get my fingers cleaned up here. And my work surface, make sure I'm not setting it down on paint. All right, so this is the color I'm dealing with this time. And your pieces will be the length of this and 9 inches. You'll have plenty of fabric for both hearts. And I recommend just using a pencil. And we're going to you want to just kind of do a loose trace around it. It doesn't have to be exact. And you might want to use a marker depending on how dark your fabric is. I can't remember if we've got some of the darker fabric out there. Just make sure that you're tracing it on the back side of the fabric. Don't trace it on this side. Okay, that's important because this line that we're putting on is not the line we're going to cut. This is just our guide. We're actually going to cut it wider so it can wrap around. Okay. So don't put your hearts right next to each other to try and save fabric. Leave, you know, like a finger length apart if you want to try and save the fabric for something else. Give yourself space to have I think it's called a seam, like a seam allowance, if we're talking sewing terms. Okay, so I've got my 2 hearts traced here. Then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut them out of my main piece here very loosely, and then I'm going to come back in and do a little more detail around the edges there. Okay. All right, I know it's kind of hard to see. Let me see if we can bring it up. It looks like you can see it a little bit. So what we want to do now is we want to have almost a finger length all the way around. So I am going to cut, and don't be afraid to cut too much because we can trim it after the fact. So I'm just going to take, it's about a 1/2 inch. Let me just measure that to make sure my eyes are correct. Yes. It's about a 1/2 inch all the way around. Give or take. It's okay if it's a little less. Or a little more. I would err on the side of more just so make sure you have enough. Because like I said, we're going to trim it after the fact. Okay, there's one. The other thing you could do is trace the bigger heart. Although for that one, it wouldn't be quite big enough anyway. So I just would suggest doing it this way. If you're uncomfortable eyeballing it with the marker or with the scissors and doing it that way, then go through after you've got this and take your pencil and just do another heart around so that you have something to cut with or cut along if you need to. Okay. That's done. Let's see if this is dry. We're still a little wet. I'm going to get my scraper out. And I'm going to just start scraping the paint away. When you're doing this process, be careful that you don't scrape too hard along these edges and pop the wood off. Plywood is just a series of layers of wood, and so we want to make sure that we're not just kind of scraping so hard that we're taking that top layer of wood off. And if you put the crayon or the candle wax down fairly well, your paint should come up fairly easy. It shouldn't take a lot of work. The big part is just remembering where you put it. I do not, so I'm kind of just scraping the whole thing. Is that cool? I love this technique. It just is so very natural to paint chipping and just random spots. Just getting worn away the paint. So earlier I had mentioned that you could do a different color under there. So if you had painted this, started out with a red, a black, a pink, turquoise, whatever your color is, you would see that kind of peeking through. So, and I've seen different makers do multiple layers of this. So they'll do, you know, the dark first, and then they'll do a color, and then scrape it, and then do another color. And so I don't know if you've ever seen barnwood where, or old wood from a house, like an old homestead house, where you see those multiple colors from where it's been painted over the years, kind of peeking through those worn out areas. And so that's kind of what you can mimic by painting it multiple times. Scraping, paint, or so you would apply your first coat, wax, paint, scrape, wax, paint, scrape, wax, paint, scrape. And do that each time. So you're revealing a different color with each layer. And you could just, you know, have the wax just right over the original area still. It's just such a pretty technique. All right, so I only painted this once because I missed it the first time. So let's put a second coat on that. There we go. And then I'm going to scrape this. And I didn't put any wax on that one. We're going to leave that and just do a little sanding on it. Okie-dokie. Let's come in with our sanding block. Just kind of soften up those edges a little bit. I like to take the edge of my sanding block, or if you had sandpaper, fold it in half, and kind of just come at an angle to create a line where these little bubbles start and stop on the sand candlestick, excuse me. And it creates a worn out line right here and gives it just more of a 3D effect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, so for this little one, do be careful. It's a little more delicate. So I'm just sanding the edges of it so we can reveal some of that darkness underneath, just around the edges on this one. All right, then I'm going to grab a baby wipe and just kind of wipe everything off, get all the sandy bits off, the dust. Okay. All right, so this is the next step. We're going to pull out our inner hearts and we're going to lay them down and we're going to glue this around those edges. So I'm using a glue gun. You can use some tacky glue, but I do recommend a glue gun because it does set up a little bit faster and it works really well with the fabric. And I like to use these little silicone finger protectors. I think you can get them at the Dollar Tree, any probably craft store. Okay, so as I'm going around, the one thing that we need to do when we get to the top of the heart here is cut down so it will fold over and around that those humps on the heart. Because if we don't, it wouldn't be able to come in like this. So we're going to cut it pretty close to the line that we made when we traced it, and then it will fold over. If you've cut it a little too short and it's not getting to the edge, that's okay. Just continue on. Let me just show you here. Let me get this piece up and I'll show you a quick way to test it to make sure that it's going to work. So if you're worried about maybe an area that's cut too short and it's not going to wrap around all the way, what you can do is take your other heart, and most likely as you put your piece on, that's going to sandwich that area right there. So it's okay if it's not, you know, completely wrapped around your frame. So right there at that corner, it's not coming over that point. You can see how that looks. And I had it a little short right here. It's not going to wrap there. But when I put my frame or my outside frame over my inside frame, it's going to be fine. If you're worried about it, test it, put your frame on and see where it's sitting, and then go from there. Okay. And then if you have any excess that looks kind of bulky, like right down in here, we've got these two pieces that are a little bulky. I'm going to trim those off just so this will lay a little flatter on my base. Okay. So I'm going to put this on here, test it out. Put our outside frame over our inner frame. I might have to even cut that little center bit a bit more. No, we're good. And because the fabric's a little stretchy and it's cotton, we're going to be able to fill this with some fluff and it's going to be great. All right. Let's cut in here. Get that done first. I'm going to lay my heart on top. I'm just going to work in small sections. And if you don't have a glue gun and you're using like a tacky or a craft glue, this process will just take a little bit longer as your glue sets up. So just work in small sections. If you use, you know, a smaller amount of glue, you can maybe get away with some clamps. It just kind of depends on the glue to help hold the fabric while it sets up. And there we go. I just pop that in there. It should be snug because the fabric is giving the heart a little excess in there, and that is okay. I'm actually going to pop it off real quick and cut down into my heart a little bit more because it's catching and not allowing it to go all the way on right there. There we go. And there we are. And then you can kind of see the give there where my fingernails are hitting there, and that's where our pillow's going to come in. And then I'm just going to come in and trim away some of the excess. There we go. Alrighty. This piece is dry. Let's come back to it real quick and get it scraped so it's ready to go. All right, so now we're going to put our fluff in and get these put together. We'll start with our small one, and I'm going to put my base on first, or the bottom of my candlestick. Don't be afraid to move your piece around and make sure everything's lined up. Look at it from all angles. I'm going to use a clamp to hold it down while I work on the other side. And I'm going to put glue on the base. This is just kind of something I think is going to be helpful as we work with the fluff. And you can even use some of the hot glue gun here, if that makes it easier for you. Okay. So I've got my two pieces here, and the fluff goes a long way. I probably gave you way too much, but I'm going to just kind of form it into my heart here, and I'm going to really press it down. It is a little formable in the terms of it will hold somewhat of a shape. And I got glue on my fingers, so now the fluff is sticking to my glue. But you can kind of see how that's holding its shape in the heart. It sticks out a little bit, but that's okay because we want it to push the fabric away when we press it down onto the base. I might have a little too much here. There we go. I think that's going to be great. So it's sticking out about a ½ inch to maybe an inch. And more so in this area, it's more congested in that area. So just kind of play around with it while, or play around with your fluff to get it kind of in your areas that you want. Okay. And then I'm just going to press it down onto my base, lining up my edges, and then I'm going to clamp it. And we're going to let that sit for a little bit. But see how that's got that little pillowy, puffy heart look? Isn't that just so cute? Oh, I just love this. I love this. All right, so then we're going to go on to the next one. All right, let's get some more fluff out. Kind of form it to our shape here. All right, I think that's good. Kind of see it stays where it's at once you form it. So that's how thick mine is. Now when you're applying the glue, I don't know if I mentioned this before. I don't think I did. You can use a glue gun for this step. But you want to make sure there's a line that's scored, and the line is the dividing line between the outside frame and the inside frame. So when you're applying glue, make sure to put glue on both sides so we catch both frames. That way, this center frame is getting glued in and won't pop out, okay? All right, so I'm just adjusting my fluff a little more, making sure it's not sticking out. I want it to kind of be inside there. And then flip it over, lay it down. I'm going to line it up. And then I'm going to use my clamps. Now the more fluff, the more clamps you're going to need to get it to really squeeze that frame in, or just hold it if you don't have clamps. I'm just making sure all my scallops are aligned, and then I'm going to squeeze it together with my clamps. And depending on how much fluff you used, you know, how much you were able to squeeze in there will determine how many clamps you might need, right? It might be super fluffy. So you might need more than a few clamps. So I'm just looking and making sure I don't see any gap here, especially on this scalloped edge. And if you're using the glue gun for this step, you probably don't need as many clamps as I do, because the glue gun does set up fairly fast, even more so than, you know, my super glue here. There we go. That one's set up. While that's setting up, let's put the bottom on here. All right. Let's work on adding some fun embellishments to the top of this heart while this one is setting up. And this is where this fun bag comes in. So what I did was I added ribbon here, and then some jute and some raffia, and topped it off with a button. And then on the smaller one, I just wrapped the jute around and gave it a bow tie. So that's one idea. You can kind of just play around with the items you have and see what you want to do. I gave you each 2 pieces of ribbon. So you could wrap them both if you wanted, or you could just decide which one you wanted more or which one you liked better. But I'm going to stick with the same kind of theme here. I'm going to wrap my jute around my heart a couple times, and then we're going to tie it in the front with a bow. And then I think I'll add a button to this. So I'm just going to do a simple, like a shoelace bow here. And then get it to lay how I want. You can kind of separate these a little bit. So cute. Okay. And then we'll use my glue gun, and I've got a small button I'm going to put right on the top of that. A little dollop of glue there, and push my button on. You know, I just realized that I cut my fabric with my hearts pointing to the side. So, in hindsight, I probably should have paid attention to my pattern. Oh well, I think it looks cute anyways. I'm probably the only one that will notice that. Okay, so I'm applying some glue right in the crevice between where those two meet. And then I'm going to attach it to my stand. I usually don't do that, but I really want to have the stability of this because the tops are just a little heavier than most other projects that we work with. And then we're going to probably be good on this. Let's see here. Just a little more squeeze right there, I think. Leave them on that spot. And right there. Okay. So now with the ribbon, I cut it. You could pre-tuck this, but I didn't. In hindsight, I probably should have. But I just used something sharp and kind of tried to tuck it down in there. And you can also just wrap it around the whole thing and glue it in the back. So you could tuck it down in there. There's still a little give there, or you could just wrap it around the whole thing and glue it in the back, which that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to use my jute to help me with that. So we're going to flip it over. And I'm going to use my glue gun. I'll put a little dab here because it's super hot. I'm going to grab my nifty finger protector, wrap, and attach. Not just cute, 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 cute. Okay. And then I'm going to wrap my jute around as well. give it a tie. Okay, so I've just done a quick little tie there. And before I tie it again, I want to put some of my raffia in here. I don't think I'm going to use all of this, maybe just a small amount. So I'm just going to snip some off my bundle and lay it that way. And then maybe I'll try and do a crisscross. Let's see if I can grab some other a little bit. Having it go both directions, laying it crisscross this way. Then I'm going to take my jute and secure the raffia in my jute. I'll just pull it apart. And then I'll create a bow on this one as well. This one's a little bit bigger with my tails. And then I'm going to take my bigger button, putting it a little glue on the center of my bow. And I'm going to hold that in for a second. There we are. Okay, so what happened is it's kind of popping out. I don't know if you can tell, but I really want that to sit back just a little bit. And just because of the fluffiness of the heart itself is causing it to pop out just a little bit. So I'm going to put a little dab of hot glue under the bow and the raffia and all of that, and then just hold it up on the top here to create a connection while that glue sets up. Oh, there we go. And that sits a lot better. Oh, sorry. That sits a lot better. It's not kind of, it doesn't look like it's about to fall off when I set it upright because it was kind of just dangling there. So there we go. Let's glue on our stand, and this project is complete. I hope you enjoyed doing something just a little bit new. I always love fabric projects. I love sewing, but I also don't love sewing. I have to be in the right mind to sew, but I also just feel like fabric just adds so much texture and elevates projects. I'm just going to set this up, let that sit there for a minute. And I'm going to trim. Better give it a few more seconds. I'm being impatient. There we go. I'm going to trim up this raffia a little bit. There we go. All right. Anyways, I think fabric just kind of elevates projects and adds a bit of texture to your decor. You could definitely bypass the fabric if you're not wanting to have these puffy pillow type tops. You could just put some pretty paper inside and do a decoupage, or you could just paint them, and that would be just as pretty. But check those out. Aren't they just precious? I love the rusticness of them. And the jute and the buttons are the icing on the cake, I think, for these. So there's the new ones. Let me bring over my old. There we go. So, like I said, I hope you enjoyed this project. Make sure to commit time to yourself to get crafty and do some creative therapy. And I look forward to crafting with you next month. Next month's project is full of rainbows and sunshine, so I think something we all need. And I hope you have a great month. Happy crafting, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.